Ever get that feeling like everyone's suddenly talking about a company right after, like you hear about their earnings report, like almost like their logo just kind of pops up everywhere overnight?
Yeah.
Well, get this, that buzz we're talking about, it might actually be influencing us to shop there more.
Interesting.
We're diving deep today into some seriously cool research from Stanford, MIT, and UPenn, and they use GPS data to track how these earnings announcements, these financial reports, actually impact our real-world behavior. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's funny how we think about financial news as something that only matters to, Wall Street, right?
Yeah.
But this research really shows that it filters into our daily lives in some pretty surprising ways.
Okay, so picture this. You're a researcher, and you've got access to this massive beta set of anonymized smartphone locations, right? Millions of data points.
Wow.
All telling you where people are going. And now you take that and you cross it with the dates that companies release their earnings reports.
Yeah.
What do you think you'd find?
I don't know.
What's your hunch?
I wouldn't have guessed this. They found a pretty immediate increase in people visiting those company stores.
Wow.
Right after the earnings announcements came out. And we're not just talking about a tiny blip on the radar. It was a statistically significant surge in foot traffic.
It's almost like there's this, subconscious signal being sent out, right?
Right.
Even if we're not consciously thinking, oh, got to go buy that new gadget now that their profits are through the roof, it's having an effect. Mm-hmm. What's really fascinating is how this plays out over time.
Yeah, absolutely. See, the thing is, the effect wasn't just on the day of the announcement. It actually peaked about 4 to 5 days later.
Interesting.
Which suggests that it takes a little bit for the news to spread beyond just, the financial headlines. It seeps into everyday conversations, it pops up on social media, and then boom, people start showing up at the stores.
Like that whole 6 degrees of separation thing, but with earnings reports and shopping carts.
Exactly. And, speaking of how news spreads, they found that media coverage plays a huge role in this whole thing. The more an earnings announcement was covered, whether it was traditional news articles or talked about on social media, the bigger that spike in foot traffic became.
So it's like this chain reaction almost.
Yeah.
Company announces earnings, it hits the news cycle, people start buzzing about it online, and then suddenly you see more people walking into their stores a few days later. But here's the real kicker. It's not the same for every company. The type of product they're selling, it really changes the game. It's like that saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. But in this case, instead of trash, it's earnings reports.
Right.
And instead of treasure, well, it might just be our shopping habits.
Yeah, it turns out this whole earnings announcement thing leading to more foot traffic, it's not, one size fits all.
Right.
The researchers found this key difference between companies selling what are called durable goods versus those selling non-durable goods.
Now, for anyone who hasn't, spent their days geeking out on economics,
yeah,
no judgment.
Right.
Durable goods are basically things that are designed to last a while, like your cars, appliances, furniture.
Yep.
The kind of stuff that you buy and hope you don't have to replace anytime soon.
Exactly. Yeah. And then on the flip side, you've got those non-durable goods, which are things that we consume much faster, right? So food, drinks, your everyday essentials. It's like the difference between buying, a new fridge versus grabbing your morning latte.
Exactly. So picture this. You're in the market for a new sofa. You're doing your research, you're comparison shopping, and then boom, you see this news report. Some furniture company crushed their earnings forecast.
Right.
Does that make you more likely to check them out knowing that?
I mean, it's certainly possible, and that's actually what these researchers found with the durable goods. When companies had what they call a positive earnings surprise, meaning they did better than expected, it actually did lead to more people, visiting their stores.
Interesting.
But get this, when those same companies had what's called a negative surprise, so they didn't do as well as people thought they would, foot traffic actually decreased.
That's so interesting. It's like we're almost using it as a signal.
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, if this company selling these big ticket items is struggling, maybe I should hold off on that big purchase. It's almost like a vote of confidence or lack thereof based on how they're performing financially.
Yeah. And it seems like with durable goods, customers are really factoring in that company's long-term kind of prospects, right?
Yeah.
They're thinking, are they going to be around to honor that warranty? Is the product quality still top-notch? But here's where it gets interesting.
Oh, I love a good plot twist.
Yeah.
What about those non-durable goods?
Well, this is where it gets really intriguing. For those companies selling more of those everyday items, so your coffee shops, your restaurants, The research actually found something different. It almost didn't matter if the news was good or bad. Extreme surprises, whether it was positive or negative, they both actually led to more people going to the stores.
So it's almost like any press is good press when it comes to that morning coffee or a quick lunch.
Yeah.
Just being in the news cycle, being the company that everyone's talking about, is enough to pique people's interest and get them in the door.
That's the idea. It seems like for the non-durable goods, the effect was driven more by just, how much attention the company was getting rather than the specifics of like how good or bad their finances were doing. But I know what you're thinking. What about advertising?
Right.
Could this all just be because companies ramp up their ad spending right around those earnings announcements?
Right. Is that really all it is? Like, are
Yeah.
we just puppets to, like, cleverly timed ad campaigns?
That's the big question, right? And these researchers, they wanted to know too. So they actually looked into whether companies significantly increase their advertising during these, earnings periods. Okay. And guess what? The evidence seems to say that advertising is always a factor, of course, but it can't completely explain why we see this it doesn't fully explain this phenomenon.
Okay, so we can't just chalk it up to companies just, like, getting louder with their marketing when it's earnings season.
Right.
But what about other things? What if, like, those surges in foot traffic just happen to be because of other things going on at the same time? Maybe it's a holiday shopping season, or maybe there's just like a big sale going on.
Yeah, for sure. The researchers thought of that too. And to rule those things out, they did something really, really clever, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, so they created what they called pseudo-announcement dates, which is basically they took the actual date of the earnings announcement and they shifted it by a month or two, either earlier or later. And guess what? Yeah. They didn't see that same spike in foot traffic on those made-up dates.
Wow. So it really does seem like more than just a coincidence.
Yeah. It really does.
So it's like they went through like a process of elimination. They ruled out all the usual suspects, and we're left with this undeniable connection, right, between these reports and the way that we shop.
Yeah, and that's I think that's really what makes this research so compelling. It's like you're shining a light on how deeply connected our lives are to these markets, even if we don't like consciously realize it. It's like this hidden layer of influence that's always like running in the background of our lives.
It really is. And I don't think I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Next time I'm like scrolling through my phone and I see a headline about some company's earnings, I'll be like, wait a minute. Is this why I'm suddenly craving a latte from that new place down the street?
Right. Or maybe you're browsing online and you find yourself clicking on an ad for some company that you just saw, mentioned on a news website. It's all connected.
It really is. Wow, this has been a real eye-opener. So for anyone listening out there, if you thought these earnings reports were just for, the Wall Street folks, think again. This research really shows that the financial world and our everyday lives are way more connected than we might think. It makes you wonder, what other subtle influences are out there, just below the surface, shaping our decisions?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? What else is out there? And, that's something that I hope researchers continue to look into because there's so much more to uncover about how all this information, even the stuff we don't think is relevant to us, it might really be shaping our behavior in ways we never even imagined.
It really makes you think about the world a little differently, right?
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely keep an eye out for more research on this topic. It's super fascinating. But until next time, keep those thinking caps on. Stay curious out there.